Okay, well, good morning, everyone. My name is Ali. I'm so excited to be here with Angela and Sam. We are talking about leadership at Optima Living, but we're also launching the Optima Living podcast series. So this is really cool and really excited to be doing this today. And thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome.
So let's get into leadership at Optima. And I think we, at least the three of us know, but many others do, that leadership at Optima is a bit unique. It's not the same as maybe some other organizations. And as Optima itself, we've grown, we've scaled, and we continue to do that. So Angela, maybe I'll start with you. Tell me a little bit about, in your mind, how would you define the term leadership at Optima? What does that mean to you?
Our North Star is let us welcome you home. And by empowering our leaders to really take that to heart and base all of their decisions on that, really is for me what leadership can be defined at Optima.
And if you think about that a little bit, how do you see that as different from other organizations that you've been part of? Is there something in the way that people are empowered, maybe the way that people are making decisions? Is there a difference at all between what you see there and or what you have at Optima versus other organizations you've seen?
So at Optima, we really look at our residents as being the core to our organization. So we exist in other roles at Optima really to support our general managers to really provide the utmost care and services to our residents. So it's that bottom-up approach as opposed to that top-down approach. And it's really, again, doing anything we can do to help support our general managers fulfill our North Star of let us welcome you home.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that, right? Because I know we've been talking lately about this idea of like, we have no corporate office, we have no head office, we have support offices, and helping even our teams understand that concept of like, we as an organization exist to support our teams and to support our residents. What are you seeing that that our leaders need most right now? What are they getting? What are areas that you think is unique at Optima? And what are insights that have come to you from that?
I think what's different is in a lot of organizations or communities, it is that top-down approach, more doing to rather than doing with. And at Optima, it's about doing with and working with our teams. Like Angela was saying, flipping the script on support office. It's not corporate level down here. It's flipping it that our support offices are supporting our teams at the communities.
Can you give me some examples? Tell me a story.
Okay, we have one of our rising stars who very recently realized the breakfast cook wasn't showing up that day. She was at work, it was 6:45, and instead of just phoning someone or complaining about it, she stepped right into the kitchen and actually made pancakes for almost 200 residents. And I think that's an example of servant leadership. It's an example of just taking the lead and stepping in where you need to.
This takes me to an interesting conversation about this. There are many books out there that talk about leadership as something that is, you're either born with it or it's learned behavior. Are you born with it, etc. At Optima, how would you discuss or how would you describe the concept of leadership and an aspiring leader? Is that someone that is that comes to us with that skill set? Is that something that is appointed? Is that something that's earned? How would you kind of describe a leadership journey and the different leadership journeys that are available at Optima?
Yeah, so I would say leadership can never be appointed. It has to be earned. People want to or should want to follow someone as opposed to being told to follow. And we've all seen examples of that in our life. I can't ever see a situation where that works in the long term. Do I think somebody can learn to be a leader? 100%. Because when people come, quite frankly, start at Optima in some of our roles that are directly working with the residents, they really don't have those leadership skills. But they learn it through training, through learning leadership training that we would provide, but also by example, by watching their leaders and emulating what they do. And that's why it's so important for us, that attitude. People who come into our communities to work and work with our residents have the right attitude. Attitude is everything. You can teach leadership skills. You can certainly teach technical skills and things like that. But that attitude is really going to help someone become a leader. For those people who have that desire as well as have the right attitude, the sky's the limit, quite frankly. And it's our goal to get them there. My job is to really make sure that we grow the next generation of leaders and that we can leave our communities during the day or at the end of our shift and make sure that everything's going to be okay.
Do you have any stories for me? Or do you have any like people or ideas or thoughts or really examples rather of leaders that have surprised you, that have come out of nowhere, that you've seen grow and do interesting things?
Absolutely. We're actually sitting beside one right here, and I'm going to make Sam a little bit embarrassed at this point. But as many people know, Optima has grown through acquisitions as well as transitions, other organizations. And so Samantha, actually, when we did an acquisition of a portfolio of homes in Alberta, Samantha was actually on maternity leave. And, so she didn't get a chance to meet these new folks that were coming in, and we didn't get a chance to meet her right off the bat. But on her mat leave, she did come in for a visit and a meeting. And ultimately, after mat leave, came back in as the general manager, but quickly saw that there was other things that Sam wanted to do, and most importantly, had the desire to do. And so now Samantha sits at this table as the regional operation manager, and as well as leading our Rising Stars program, which is encouraging other people to follow sort of the path that she's in. So, for me, I'm not surprised by Sam's success, but I'm so pleased with Sam's success. And I think it's just a great example of that.
I think it was really interesting. Thank you, first of all. Blushing and tearing up at the same time. Even before I became a general manager, I had this thought in my mind, I would never want to do that job. Like, you're hearing all the complaints, you're dealing with all the problems, how are you going to enjoy that? and then becoming a general manager, I get to have some decisions. And I very clearly remember speaking with my leader at the time in our weekly meetings and bringing an issue or a problem to my leader and saying, what do you want me to do with this? And there was this light bulb moment that happened for me when I realized Optima Living was different, when this person said to me, well, what do you think is the right thing to do? And I remember actually being taken aback, like, what? You're asking me what the right thing to do is? And she said, yeah, what do you think is the right thing to do in this situation? And of course, I had a thought in my mind of the best thing I thought we should do. But I was very much prepared to hear, do this and don't do that. And in this case, having that freedom, immediately I had a sense of empowerment and ownership over my community. And I presented the solution, and she said, that sounds like a great idea. Let's go for it. And I said, really? So from that day on, I think my perspective shifted. First of all, I have some safety here to share my thoughts and ideas for solutions to issues in the community. And it gave me this new sense of ownership that I'm accountable and I have a say as to what goes on here. So what does happen here is a true reflection of my leadership and my team. And so it was a pretty cool moment to look back on. When
you empower someone, there's also a bit of a fear of empowerment that happens at the same time. When you're empowering someone, but there's the fear of the empowered about, okay, can I do this? Can I not do this? Am I capable of this, etc.? And I think sometimes as we think about empowering people, we always have to think a little bit about, okay, we've empowered them, but have we given them the tools? Have we given them the things they need to be successful? And then have we allowed them to go through that effort? We talk about a value of ours being the gift of failure, right? That we should be unpacking gifts of failure and making sure that we use it as a gift. But I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that. Is that something that resonates or thoughts you have?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a really important thing about Optima is we're not a cookie cutter organization. And by that, I mean, we have communities across the provinces of Alberta and British Columbia, but no two communities are the same. And so therefore, no two practices can be the same from northern Alberta to the mainland of British Columbia. And so we really ask our leaders in the communities to really think about sort of our values as their guiding principles, right? To really think about, when you're looking at trying to make a decision, reflect back on the values. And if you can answer those values, or if you can take those into account, you're not going to go wrong with giving the answer. The other thing is having standards. So standards for us is a guide to making a decision, as opposed to thou must do this. Our policies will never give you step-by-step guideline to do things, but other than that, it will give you context around why you're doing something, and always thinking about the why.
And it is interesting because oftentimes, I could almost say to anyone that you can take all of our processes and procedure, like you can take all of it, but it's not that you can replicate what we do, because it's also in the culture, right? It's a lived experience that all of these things are part of, just like as a barista or as a cook or as a healthcare aide or as a recreation therapist. You have all these tools, but what you do with them is what really counts. And that's the part that I think is really exciting when we think.
I think that speaks to our values too. It's just what is the right thing to do can apply to something so small, like you see a tissue on the ground. The right thing to do is pick it up. Whereas if you're facing a really tough workplace concern or investigation, what is the right thing to do really helps figure out where to go next with it. And it's such a nice thing to be able to fall back on, and knowing that those values aren't just words on a website, that it is really what we live by every day, for me is personally so fulfilling, because I know as long as I'm doing the right thing, there's nothing really bad that can come of it. And if something does come of it that's not great, then it's our gift of learning or our gift of failure. And we can learn from that and do it differently next time.
And we're a people organization. We're people serving people. And so, yes, we have beautiful buildings and we have great decor and a lot of those things, but that only gets you so far. It's really what happens inside those communities that's the most important. And that's what our residents might come to us because of perhaps the paint on the walls or pictures on the walls, but they stay with us because of the people. And so anything that we can do to support people in whatever they do on their daily lives with serving our residents is really the key for that. Quite frankly, if you think about it, values and really leaning on your values as a decision maker, to Sam's point, you'll never go wrong based on that. And then knowing you have the support as well. We don't expect anyone to be an island. In fact, we don't want anyone to be an island in amongst themselves. There are so many different supports. You've got peer-to-peer support. You have supports through our subject matter experts. You have support through our support office by virtue of the name. So it's just so important to make sure for us to really empower to our leaders and for leaders to understand that you're not in it alone. It can be a really lonely place to be a leader, but you need to surround yourself with people who report to you, but also who you work with on a daily basis that you can count on for that support.
If you were to describe or if you were speaking to someone who was thinking about applying to Optima, what would you say to them?
So I would say we want somebody who's going to come and want to learn when they join Optima. For us, it's a place of learning because no 2 days is ever the same. And quite frankly, we're always looking for the next best thing, as you're saying, and the way to get better at things that we do. And so for us, the journey doesn't end. We don't ask you to park your experience at the door. We ask you to bring your experience with you through the door so that we can learn from it, so that we can gain from it, and so that we can share those ideas. It goes right to our strategic plan. Our strategic plan isn't created in some office somewhere by itself. It's built through ideas that have come up through our communities, through our leaders, through our support office, to get us to a place where we feel like this is how we want to focus our next 12 months on. It's a journey. It's a journey. You may join us thinking you want to do one thing, but you get an opportunity to do so many things as you join us within your community, outside of your community, and other opportunities as well.
Sam, anything you would add to that? If someone was potentially thinking of joining Optima, what would you say to them?
Be ready to be empowered in your communities and be ready to contribute. Because I think, to Angela's point, we're always looking to our frontline leaders in the communities and our frontline in the communities to tell us what's working well, what's not working, how can we do this better? Even if something is working well, what can we do to continue to make sure that's happening? And what can we do to improve it even more? And I think another really special thing is that when we say we're welcoming you home, that's not just for our residents, that's for our employees as well. So be ready to be welcomed and valued.
If you want to live your best life, and if you want to leave home every day, or you want to leave work every day knowing that you've made an impact, then come join Optima. But be ready for emotion, be ready for passion, be ready for excitement, and be ready for surprise. Because when I look at almost all of our leaders, their journey is not always, cast in stone. It can go in different directions, and every day can be different in that regard. If we're thinking a little bit about this idea of kind of the things we have to do on a regular basis, operational leadership, like leadership in terms of people, and then operational excellence. How do we at Optima, how would you say, do we balance the two? Because in some ways, mission, margin, there people can say that there's a conflict between the two, or is there a conflict? I don't know, but I'm curious how you see the operational world versus the human leadership world and how we balance those in your day-to-day stuff.
For me, there's a very simple recipe that goes into running a community, right? If you have happy employees, then you have happy residents, and your margin will follow based on that. It sounds simple. We all know it's not easy to achieve, but it's really that philosophy. If we take care of our employees will take care of our residents, and then we'll have financial success in our communities. If when you go into your strategic planning, and we call it our big rocks process, and really only focus on the margin, you're going to miss the big picture. You're going to miss those other key ingredients that go into that simple recipe. You're going to miss the fact that you need to support our employees, empower them, give them opportunities for growth and learning, which in turn affects your resident satisfaction. So I think on paper, conceptually, sure, it makes sense, but you really have to live and breathe it, and you have to structure your strategic plan, your big rock, sort of your operational excellence, for lack of a better word, to really empower that and to really live that. Because quickly people will, if you don't act on that, and if you don't do what you say you're doing, people see through that right away. And so we want to make sure that people understand, and that we actually remind ourselves that those are the most important things when we're looking at what we want to do at Optima, on an annual basis, on a 5-year basis, or for as we grow the organization.
Our growth target is about impact. It's about if we can make an absolutely impactful difference to people's lives, and there are more people out there that need that, then our work is not done. And we need to continue to do that.
We lean in at all different aspects, right? We lean in for sure for our own communities, but we lean in for the industry. We really embrace the opportunities to sit on association boards, speak at conferences, share our thoughts, because we know if we can help people get better at what we do and provide great services to seniors in our provinces, it's going to make a difference for the entire industry. So we don't feel like we just have a responsibility for our own organization. We feel like we have a responsibility for the industry.
On that topic, let's shift a little bit to this idea of growth opportunities. I'd love for both of you to give me some examples, again, almost speaking to people who are watching this, who maybe work at Optima today, and maybe even give me some examples of people that, and you don't have to talk about names, but you can give me examples of people of growth paths that have happened, because I want to give people a good sense of how and where you can become a leader within this organization and what that would look like.
There are so many examples. I think a few that come to mind for me are people who have started out at reception, or even started out as a healthcare aide and moved into reception, and then from there moved into administrative manager roles, or a community relations coordinator role, or somebody who started as a housekeeper and moved into the hospitality manager role, and then from hospitality manager moved into community relations coordinator. Or the most obvious, I think, is LPNs and nurses moving into director of care roles, and general manager roles from there. So there's so many different ways I think that employees have grown within the organization, and to see that continue to happen is really exciting. And the other exciting thing is that we have programs that are encouraging our teams to grow. So we have Waybound, we have Rising Star, we have Starbound on the way, we have Illuminate on the way, all different pathways for mentorship, for leadership operational training, for frontline who want to be leadership. It's really exciting.
And even at our support offices as well, if you look at it from that perspective, we are really proud to be named one of the top employers of new graduates in the province of British Columbia, and we really lean into the co-op program. We think it's amazing to have the energy of students in our support offices to help us, to help the organization grow and to help their own skill sets grow as well. But I've seen a few co-ops actually move in from coming here as a student and then coming back when they graduate and becoming a member of our support office. And how great, because they were part of the ground up type thing. And so that's a pretty exciting thing when you see somebody turn around and come back. And for us, that's important. For me, that's extremely important because we want to break the stigma of seniors housing and care, because often people will look at us as maybe it's not as exciting as finance, working for an institutional bank. But honestly, I would say it's very different from that perspective, because you get to do a little bit of everything. What other organization or what other industry would you be able to provide care for residents, focus on hospitality excellence, also look at real estate opportunities, development opportunities, leadership opportunities? I mean, it's never ending. And so that piece for me is pretty exciting. And again, it's been a really successful program for us.
I think that has been a great shift for us as an organization, is actually laying the groundwork, having colleges have classrooms within our communities, having, the I don't know, like 50 odd partnerships with academic institutions. I was just thinking about one of our students who then came and worked with us full time, helped us start what was the beginnings of our Spark Memory Living program, and then went off to medical school and is now doing her thing in medical school. But it's so awesome to see that the skills she learned while she was with us gave us so much, and then she's able to go out and do things. And there's countless examples of that also just really excite me and excite us from that perspective. Sam, I want to come back to the Rising Star program. You talked a little bit about this, and I know that you lead the Rising Star program at Optima. Tell me more about this program. Tell me more about why it's so exciting. You can tell me about some of the tear-joking moments, but also just about what people should know about it and why it's so unique and special.
Rising Star program is unique and special because it's our senior leaders at Optima that are teaching the frontline operational leaders of our communities. We have frontline employees. We have people on our leadership teams in the program. It's a very selective program. You have to apply with an essay. There's going to be an interview process, and it's a cohort. So it's not just you take a couple courses and you're done. This year, we actually have 30 courses in the program spanning from September to April. Again, sessions led by Optima's leaders. It's not just information about HR or about finance or about meeting your budget. It's about how do we approach leadership at Optima Living? What is our Optima way, our culture that we want to see in our communities, and what's your part in that? It's just such a wide breadth of knowledge that makes everyone who takes that program a better leader no matter what their position is. So you don't just have to be a general manager. You don't necessarily even have to be a leader already in the community by title. But it teaches you so many different things, and I think it's really bringing excellence to the front lines and to our leaders. Starbound is an exciting one that's coming that is going to be focused on our front line and how do we develop our front line if we have an HCA that wants to become a director of care one day. Then we have the Shining Star program. The Shining Star program has been with Optima since 2024. And what's really awesome about this is that it's peer-to-peer recognition. So based on our values, living the values, someone gets recognized and they get the Shining Star Award. From there, they nominate a colleague or someone else in the community as well. And so it's really special to see people nominating each other. And I think that's a different level of appreciation or a different kind of appreciation that's so important when we get down to the front lines in the community.
Yeah, I love that part too about Shining Star, is that peer-to-peer part is just so cool, because it's one thing to be acknowledged by a manager, but it's another for your peers to actually acknowledge you in that regard. Incorporating all the things that we're talking about, why is it important to give them all of this? And from that, are we giving them a lot of hands-on experiences as well, or is it all classroom?
Great question, and reminds me of another conversation yesterday where we had a general manager telling us that he has 3 rising stars in his community. He's giving them ownership of things that are happening in the community. For example, implementing a new coffee program. Instead of him saying, okay, we're going to go with this program, we're going to roll it out on this date, here's our plan. He said to the hospitality manager, I want you to own this. What do you think? Who do you think we should choose? Why? How do you think we should roll this out? So, and for us, encouraging our general managers to empower their rising stars and everyone they're working with, but the rising stars especially, to say, you make this decision. What do you think is the right decision to make? And there was an idea floated yesterday too about having a rising star sit in the general manager seat for a couple of hours and making the decisions and fielding the questions that come in during that time to give them that real life flavor of what it's like. And I think just the simple fact of the program, having the senior leaders at Optima leading the sessions, having that direct access, that direct question and answer, open communication and dialogue, it changes people's perspective and the way that they think about leadership and accountability in the communities.
How do you see kind of leadership development opportunities shaping the Optima of tomorrow?
Yeah, that's a great question. And looking forward is a bit of a double-edged sword. So we've chosen to do a 5-year sort of look forward in our Vision 2030, giving us sort of that, again, that framework as to anything we work on today in terms of the organization will get us to that vision of 2030. I want leaders to think ahead to what they're doing, but I also want them to think about what they're focusing on today, because we have a pretty important responsibility and leaders have pretty important responsibilities.
As we grow, one of, I think, our worst nightmares would be that we lose our culture, we lose our way, or that the things that we really espouse to every day are not being done on the ground floor. And, we want to keep that connection, not by force, but by engagement, by influence, by inspiration, by ways that we can do that, and also seeing what leaders are from that perspective, for sure. As we think about the future. As we close up, I would love to get your closing thoughts on, if you were to think about what leadership development means at Optima, why is it so important, and ultimately, what is the impact it makes to serving our residents every day? What would be your closing thoughts on that?
Yeah. So maybe I'll start with saying what I think leadership development isn't. And so leadership development, in my opinion, isn't telling someone how they have to do something. It's encouraging people to be curious and to really focus on how they do things better in their own personal approach. It's how do you surround yourself with people who are as good as you are, or even better, quite frankly. And it's really giving people that confidence to ask the right questions, focus on the supports that are in place. But it's not a textbook, or it's not a playbook on how exactly to do things. It's just really building that confidence of an individual so that they can ask the right questions, they can listen more, and they can really empower their teams to be strong leaders.
I think that sometimes growth and leadership generally can be scary. And I think it's important to acknowledge all of us feel scared sometimes. Imposter syndrome is real for all of us, right? And I think that what's important for our leaders is that we push through that. Even if you're scared, you take a deep breath and you go, you keep moving, you keep doing. And you're doing it with the values in mind and your purpose in mind. And ultimately our purpose being welcoming our residents and our employees home. And ultimately, what is the right thing to do? How do we move something forward? How do we do something, continue to go when we're scared? And I think that's so important for all of us to continue to grow as an organization, as an individual, as a leader in the communities. What's the next right thing? And do it.
When you think about it, there's always like this healthy amount of scared, like of anxiety, of scaredness that you need in order to be at your best, right? And I think that if I were to think a little bit about leadership development at Optima, I think about this idea of saying that if you want to reach your full potential, if you want to be surrounded by a group of people who want to see you reach your full potential, not compete with you, but support you, And if you want to have impact that meaningfully will probably bring tears to your eyes at times, then come join us. Come spend some time, reaching that full potential. And we'll be here to celebrate you, cheer you on, and support you along the way and learn as we go through that together. So I want to thank you both for joining me today. This is so exciting, and I feel so privileged to be able to spend time with two incredible leaders in our organization. And for those of you watching, listening, we have, I think, over 250 pieces of digital content on Optima Living TV, starting back from 2020, having all sorts of interesting episodes, everything from Sex and Seniors, which did go viral, to many other topics on caregiving, on dementia, on memory living, on just a bunch of different things that I think are really, really important topics for residents, families, staff members. Tune in. We have a lot more coming. And if you have feedback, if you have comments, if you have things you want to hear, then let us know. But thanks very much.